You are listening to the Bureau Chiefs with Michael Serapio, a primetime politics podcast from CPAC. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. Well, trade negotiations were thrown into turmoil Thursday after the U.S. president posted a late-night message on his Truth Social app, saying thanks to an anti-tariff ad that was sponsored by the Ontario government, Donald Trump was terminating all trade talks with Canada. A big blow as the Carney government was expressing enthusiasm that side deals on steel, aluminum, and energy were just weeks away. And with that, let's bring in the Bureau Chiefs. Robert Fife is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, Tonda MacCharles, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and Joël-Denis Bellavance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. Hello to all three of you.
Hey there.
Hello, Michael.
Hi.
So, obviously, as I say, things are in a bit of turmoil right now, although we should point out this is not the first time that Donald Trump has suspended trade talks. He did so back in June over the digital services tax, which raises, a question. How much of this is real? How much of this is a negotiating ploy, Bob?
Well, look, I think we're going to get the talks back on track next week. The ads the Premier of Ontario said would be pulled on Monday. But I do think there's a larger issue here. We know the negotiations were going very well. There was some talk of the two leaders meeting at the APEC summit in October the 29th to be able to maybe sign off on it, not necessarily signed on a contract, but say, okay, this is good. And then that was all thrown off by Mr. Trump's tweet last night. I'm also told, though, that the president was also upset because Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, was saying, well, Canada is saying that they're going to arrest Bibi Netanyahu if he comes to Canada. And, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Canada has said that China is a strategic partner at a time when the U.S. and the United States are at war. And then Jameson Greer wasn't, the U.S. Trade Representative apparently wasn't very happy about imposing tariffs on Stellantis and General Motors, more on General Motors than I think on Stellantis. That happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. So I think there was a combination of factors that let the president go off. But my sense from the way Trump operates and the way that Mark Carney has been able to handle him is that we'll get back on track next week. I hope so, because it's in our country's best interest that it happen, and I think, frankly, it's in the best interest of the United States.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what do you think, Todd? A trade ploy, or like an emotional outburst, a real desire to stop these talks?
Could be all of the above, but I have different information than Bob that they were never that close to an agreement, be it on the sectoral tariffs, steel and aluminum, that they've been talking about reaching first. Look, I think that all of those things are in the mix in terms of what has angered Trump, and speaks to how volatile the whole situation still is, despite the seeming, before yesterday, a good relationship between Trump and Carney and their direction to their respective teams to try and get something moving. But I think next week does represent an opportunity for some mending of the fences to be done. And I think that Carney, in projecting that calm stance today, helped bring the temperature down. It signaled to a lot of people that, he's keeping calm and carrying on, and so should everybody else. But I don't underestimate the impact of his words and how much that could prolong things. Because after the digital services tax was rescinded, he still went ahead and extended tariffs, jacked Canada's tariffs from 25% to 35%, the border tariffs. And, he's done nothing but, he's made some carve-outs, some exemptions for Canada, but he could easily pull those. He's also, I think, continued to levy tariffs on other sectors. And, we're talking about autos being the big hit one right now. But don't underestimate lumber, forestry. That's a huge impact across the country. And so I see some of these things as pretty intractable, even if they manage to get back on track to do sectoral deals.
Joël-Denis?
Well, that just shows to me what happened last night when Mr. Trump saying that he was terminating the negotiations, that we're forced to walk on eggs all the time with him. And then some people are tired of walking on eggs, and you've seen the reaction from Mr. Doug Ford, the premier, with the ads. That's the one that take Mr. Trump. But also union leaders are getting tired of, of concessions, but not, anything in return. And so this will probably put a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister to have maybe a stronger stance on Mr. Trump eventually, because he might lose support from the premiers and union leaders at a time when we need to still be focused on one thing, making sure that we remain one team Canada. But so it's a critical moment, I would say, and it just shows that as a partner, as a leader, as a negotiator, Mr. Trump is not. You can't trust him. You can't trust him. That's all.
Which, as people have always noted, he's a mercurial person. Yeah. You never know what you're going to get day to day with Donald Trump. Except, you talk about this keep calm and carry on attitude that we're getting from the Prime Minister. And I do wonder a bit about the political price that you're talking about, Joël-Denis, or at least the political pressure. Because, even before this happened, Mark Carney gave that speech at the University of Ottawa on Wednesday night, where he talked about there's going to be a period of sacrifice in this country. And it's not going to be a quick fix. As I paraphrase a bit of his speech, I wonder how much patience, how much time, leeway the Prime Minister actually has on that, Bob, from the Canadian people, because I think there is still this expectation that somewhere there's going to be a Hail Mary pass that will get us a deal that everything's going to be hunky dory. But he's saying
it's not going to be hunky dory. Whatever deal we're going to get, it's not going to be very good for Canada, but it's going to be better than what we have. And the fact of the matter is that we're not in a position to be doing anything to really go after the Americans. I mean, 80% of our trade's going to the United States. We only have a population of 40 million people. They have a population of over 350 million. That market is huge. We need that market. The Prime Minister has been talking about how we have to diversify trade, but it cannot happen overnight. All the experts say that, no, we're into a period of at least 5 to 7 years of probably very difficult times for the country in a lot of ways until we get our act together in terms of pipelines and getting our resources and our critical minerals to market. So we're into a very, very rough period of time. And, the Prime Minister is not trying to sugarcoat things, but he's also not trying to put us in a situation where we're going to clash with Donald Trump, because it's not in our country's interest to do so. And the premiers can mouth off all they want, but if they're in the, they're not in the driver's seat here.
Which is what Ford said, right? He said it's easier for him to blast Trump than it is for Carney to sit across the table from him and do the same thing. But
talk about the political pressure, though, that Carney faces, because, again, if we're into this period of sacrifice, I don't know how well prepared Canadians are for that.
Well, I don't think they're well prepared enough. I don't think that we've heard enough from the government. But it's counterintuitive. What government wants to go out there and say, hey, everybody, despair, we're in trouble, right? They want to offer hope to everybody that there is an ability to build resilience in Canada and to diversify trade. So the political pressure, I think, though, funnily enough, with Trump's outburst Thursday night, allows perhaps some of Carney's critics to say, well, see, who can deal with that? That is an unpredictable force in the White House, and everybody knows it. And if you needed more proof, here again is proof. So I think that political pressure kind of plays both ways. I don't hear from any of his critics on the other side of the aisle a better approach to how to deal with Trump yet. So that's the thing that plays in their favor.
Mr. Carney's speech on Wednesday, I think, is raising expectations about the budget, that it may be the solution to our economic ailings. But also, Mr. Trump's outburst is, again, pushing Canadian patriotism in the right direction. I've seen people rallying around Mr. Ford's advertising, namely the Premier of Manitoba, Webb Canoe, who was very, very good at imitating Ronald Reagan in a very old TV. But also, Mr. Ford's campaign is also, I think, stirring a big debate in the United States about what it means to be protectionist, what it means to be following the policies of Ronald Reagan. I've seen many, influential leaders in the United States, like the governor of California, picking up on Doug Ford's campaign and putting his own grain of salt. Same thing with the governor of Pennsylvania, Mr. Josh Shapiro, I think is his name.
Shapiro.
So it is stirring a debate in the United States, and that's what Mr. Trump was probably fearing, that this ad, really...
Well, he's made the ad
He's
even more.
Exactly.
Right?
He's got attention in
Everybody's seen it
Australia.
now.
And it got the attention of Chuck Schumer as well. It's speaking of American politicians that have jumped onto
Exactly. So
it.
Mr. Ford accomplished more, I think, with this ad than any negotiations Mr. Carney and his team has accomplished, I would say.
Okay, but let's talk about the strategy of that, though, because you mentioned that Wab Kinew is now supportive of Doug Ford. So is David Eby, the Premier of British Columbia. In fact, he says BC is going to have their own kind of tariff ad push in the United States.
On lumber, I think.
On lumber, exactly. So although counter to that is this social media post, and this is from Brad Wall, former Saskatchewan Premier, and he says, quote, his asinine, and his referring to Doug Ford, his asinine threat to shut off power to the U.S., the Crown Royal poor, and now this. Premier Ford should understand that while these stunts might be good politics with the elbows up crowd in Ontario, they are more than reckless in terms of our economy. And I invite you to comment on that message if you want to. But to me, it underlines just the difficulty of this moment as well, because the longer these trade negotiations drag out, it is far harder to maintain national unity where provinces are now going to be competing against each other, and exactly what we said we were going to, not we, but Team Canada said they were going to try to avoid a sectoral fight-off as to who's going to survive.
Well, look, compare this to the 2018 free trade negotiations where there was really a Team Canada approach. They were able to stay united because Donald Trump wasn't hitting all these sectors with big tariffs. Well, now he's hitting people, whether it's 45% tariffs on lumber, which is basically hitting mainly British Columbia, but also Northern Ontario, Northern Quebec.
Newfoundland, Atlantic
and
Canada,
then the
New
steel
Brunswick.
and the aluminum, the autos. So all of these premiers are feeling the pressure, and they're all coming out. And how do you? It's really difficult to try to maintain a Team Canada approach when, say, okay, right now they're trying to save the steel and aluminum sector. And the other premiers are saying, well, what about lumber? What about canola? What about, he's got the Prime Minister has a very difficult task ahead of him to try to keep the premiers united, which I don't think is probably going to be possible given the sectoral tariffs that the President has been imposing on Canada. All he's got to try to do is to keep his eye on the ball, try to get deals that'll never satisfy anybody, but they'll be better than what we are having, and hope that Canadians will row with him towards a future where we're going to have major infrastructure projects that are going to get our resources to market and try to create homegrown jobs. And that's where we're at, but it's a long ways away.
Yeah, and we'll pick up on that again in a bit. But Tonda, what do you think about? Again, not only the comment there from Brad Wall essentially saying these types of ads are actually not helpful to the national economy bottom line, but also this idea that the longer this does drag out, we're going to see disunity in this country, greater disunity in this country.
Because of the pain that will be felt, and that's pretty clear. To Bob's point, its sectors are heavily concentrated in certain areas, right? I think that what the latest outburst from Mr. Trump shows also to the Canadians is that even if you talk about settling a few things and putting the rest of the big heavy lifting off to the COSMA, for lack of the Canada-U.S. Mexico trade agreement. It was so easy when it was NAFTA, wasn't it?
I agree.
When putting all those talks on auto and lumber and dairy and everything else off into that table doesn't guarantee any more success. Yes, perhaps it's a more structured negotiation at that time, but who knows when or if we'll ever get there, if Trump will be willing to go along with a trilateral deal. He has expressed distinct ambivalence. He just as soon prefer bilateral deal with Canada, bilateral deal with Mexico. So there's no guarantee there's an end to the overall tariff pain anytime soon. So to Bob's point, I think he's right. There is going to be fractures in the Federation. And just wait until Doug Ford makes good on his threat to maybe leverage energy and critical minerals resources. That's going to be a whole other ballgame.
Absolutely. But and when you look around, I talked about the Quebec Premier, François Legault. He's been pretty quiet over the last on this commercial issue, and then he's trying to save his political skin. That's the main reason. So he's focused on his own future and not the future of the economy. But when you look around how this commercial war has affected Canada, Ontario is very much on the forefront because of the auto sector. You've seen job losses already.
And steel.
And whereas in Quebec, the aluminum has been able to be diverted to Europe, most of it. So the shock is less pronounced in Quebec than Ontario, but Ontario is facing the big brunt right now of this commercial war. That's why you see Mr. Ford, being so vocal about it. And it's all fun and dandy for Mr. Brad Wall to lecture Mr. Ford, but I would, invite him to come and try to run Ontario if he would have the same kind of
He doesn't
reasoning.
hold any elected political office,
No.
so he's not accountable to anyone. And it's, everybody's got, freedom to express that kind of an opinion. But I think that the conservative political leaders in this country are also sort of weighing what is the next step, what is the right step. They're all fighting for their regions, be it Smith, be it Legault, be it Scott Moe. Everybody's got a special interest to protect.
And by the way, who would have thought that these ads would have set Donald Trump off?
Yeah.
I mean, really, I mean...
Because he watches late night baseball.
But they have been running for about a week now.
The ads are running in heavy rotation on Fox News. That's where Trump likely saw it.
Yeah, he saw it it was the Blue Jays Mariners game on Fox News in the United States. That's where he saw the ad.
Okay, well, there you have it. Exclusive reporting there from Joël-Denis.
Not because I was in the room with him, because that's what I was told.
Okay, but listen, but we also, when we talk about the response here in Canada, we have heard Mark Carney say time and again that part of the reason why a deal has not yet been reached is because they are determined to get a good deal for Canada, not a quick deal, not a bad deal, but a good deal for Canada. Does the messaging have to change now from the government? Does the expectation of this country have to change? Because you were saying it, whatever deal we get, it's not going to be what it once was. No. Do we even need to prepare for even worse and just settle to what we can just so we have certainty in this country?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is to get the best possible deal that they can on steel. Aluminum, I think, is less of a problem for some of the reasons that Joël said. Also, the Americans are wanting aluminum. They have to pay for it. It's coming out of their own pocket. The steel is an issue. You're going to have some kind of tariffs and some kind of quotas. And I don't know the details of the energy. In fact, we don't know all of this stuff because it's being kept very, very, very tight. But look, I think they're going to get a deal. I think they're close to getting a deal. But I don't think it's going to satisfy a lot of people. But it's going to at least put this to rest as we focus on the negotiations on what was called NAFTA. I
think the Canadians have pretty much accepted there's no tariff-free deal to be had on anything with Donald Trump, and that they'll look for better, lower baseline tariffs than any other country has. And that would be a win in Carney's eyes.
Right. That makes the upcoming budget that most important, because in that budget, Mr. Carney promised to show us that he will double our exports out of the United States market to other markets. So he should lay out the strategy in that budget. So he's raising expectations that this budget will be a major boost for Canadian economy and our workers and companies. So this is probably the biggest political rendezvous, I would say, of the year, that federal budget coming up on November 4th.
Well, and the second biggest is all the meetings in Asia right now. Yeah. There's a lot suddenly riding on all of that. Yeah. Mr. Carney's got to hustle.
Yeah, hustle, as you say. And listen, it wasn't planned, but I want a quick go-around, actually, because you mentioned the budget. And given what's now happened with Donald Trump, will Mr. Carney have an easier time getting that budget passed? And I don't know how difficult it was going to be in the first place, although there were some signals this past week from Steve McKinnon. Now that Donald Trump has essentially underlined the existential threat to the Canadian economy, does Mr. Carney have an easier time getting this budget passed, looking for allies in the House, Bob?
Boy, that's a really good question.
Thanks.
I think, look, the Conservatives are showing no signs that they would be willing to pass this budget, even though a few months ago, Pierre Poilievre was saying he'd be constructive and helping the government. He's not showing that. The Bloc Québécois is not showing that. The NDP is not, but I'm assuming they would abstain. I don't think this government is going to fall on this budget, but I don't think you're going to have the opposition parties supporting it either, because it's going to be a tough budget. They're going to take money from the civil service and divert it to other projects. The deficit is going to be higher. There's going to be a whole lot of, I gather, big stuff dealing with climate change that will make some sectors happy, immigration, and there's a whole. We don't really have a real eye into this budget, but it looks to me it's going to be a pretty significant budget that's going to have big impact on the economy. I hope it's realistic. I hope people will understand what they're trying to do. But I don't think we can say that they're going to easily pass this budget. I don't think when push comes to shove, I don't think we'll be into an election, because I think the Tories would find themselves in a situation where you have a majority Liberal government.
Okay. Tonda?
Yeah, I mean, who has a crystal ball? Nobody. Mistakes can happen, of course. But I don't see that this government falls on this budget. And I think that what we'll more likely see is MPs, probably from the NDP, get locked in an elevator or a stairwell, or be stuck in the bathroom, or suddenly get, stomach flu. I don't know, but I just don't see that it's in the interest of any party right now to trigger one.
Same thing. The Bloc Québécois said that the 22 MPs will be there to vote against it because they have put some conditions that are unacceptable for the government. But I think one way that Mr. Carney can sell that budget to the people is that this is how we can defend and assert our sovereignty in the face of tariff attacks from the United States, and that would be, a way to sell it. The cost to defend our sovereignty, this is in that budget. But I expect that budget to sail through with no problems.
Okay, well, we watch. Okay, before we're done, we need to now switch over to our yays and our nays of the week, the good steps, the missteps. Bob, what do you have?
Well, I'll give a yes to the bail reform. This has been an issue that's politically has been difficult for the Liberals. In the 416 and 905 areas of Ontario, the Conservatives picked up a lot of seats, I think, to some extent on the law and order issues. And I think they've tried to politically position themselves so that they get that off the table. Because that bail reform bill could have been basically put forward by a Conservative. And it's also got the support of the Canadian Police Association, which kind of tells you an awful lot. So I think politically it was a smart move on behalf of the government, coming before a budget in case they get defeated. They've covered themselves off.
Okay. Any nays?
Yeah, nay. I thought that the Prime Minister's speech, although he was being frank with Canadian about the difficulties the country faces, and I thought he missed a moment of providing hope to Canadians. It reminds you, in some ways it reminded me of Jimmy Carter and his energy. Remember in his sweater and his energy speech where it was a downer, and he ended up only being a one-term president. I think they need to take some lessons from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. During the recession, he always spoke about hope for the American people, and the Prime Minister needs to have a message of hope.
Okay. Tonda?
Just because, I love to argue with Fife. Honestly, I'd give a nay to the bail reform precisely for the same reasons that he gives it a yay. It is all about politics, and I think that messing around with the justice system for political reasons is garbage leadership, and I think that all parties owe it to Canadians to try as best they can to stick with principles that are established in Canadian law. And I don't think that the case has been made for a number of the reforms in that bill, including the consecutive sentences one. So I'm a stickler for some of that stuff, so I give them a nay on that. Okay. I also have a nay for Pierre Poilievre's, in that vein, comments on the RCMP leadership and the Prime Minister, and attempting to gaslight all of us to say he never said what he said. My yay, I agree with Bob on the speech that Carney delivered this week, but what I would say is I thought the approach Friday to calm the temperature down and, just take it easy on Trump and the reaction was a good one. I think it guided a lot of the reaction today and through the next couple of weeks, perhaps while the Prime Minister is away and everybody else is trying to scramble to understand what the hell's going on right now, So,
Joël-Denis.
My A goes to Stephen McKinnon, the leader of the Governing House of Commons and Minister for Transport, because he started the game of political chicken about who's going to support the budget. So he's pushed the ball in the opposition party's camps, and so we all rushed to see whether there would be any tired MPs locked in the elevators for that vote. So that, I think that was brilliant strategy on his part. My nay goes to the leader of the Bloc Québécois, François Blanchet, for lecturing Doug Ford about the ad campaign he had to defend his province. I think he was saying that this was not a good idea on the part of Mr. Ford. I would argue the opposite, and I would say that Mr. Blanchet, whenever he runs a province as difficult as Quebec or as Ontario, he can make him back and say those comments. But until then, he should stay quiet.
Okay. So that was this past week. Now let's talk about next week with our look ahead. Very quickly, not a lot of time. You look ahead for next week.
Look, all eyes will be on the Prime Minister overseas. Will he get a chance to talk to the President at the ASEAN thing? We know he's going to talk to him in APEC. He's also going to be meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. So everybody's going to be watching what's going on over there.
Yeah, and in Asia also his meeting with Modi potentially too. So two big meetings on the books probably with China and India, and then whether or not he meets with Trump. But also I'm looking for, while Carney's away, what mice will be playing here in Ottawa, and if anyone will do a better job on preconditioning the country for the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be looking whether the finance minister will be leaking more stuff about the budget.
And to us.
To us, yes. Sorry, to me.
Speaking of
raising my hands.
Speaking of doing a better job of preconditioning.
Hello, Mr. Champagne.
If you email Michael Serapio or M. Serapio, I'll send it to the group. Okay.
And also watching the rapprochement between Canada, India, and China next week with Mr. Carney being abroad, but also maybe, the sort of a gust wind that is blowing between Canada and the United States. So we'll see how those two dynamics go next week on the international scene.
Okay. Well, at least we don't expect it to be a boring week. Bob, Tonda, Joël-Denis, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And that is our episode for this week. I'm Michael Serapio. Thank you for listening to the Bureau Chiefs. We'll be back next week. The Bureau Chiefs with Michael Serapio is a primetime politics podcast from CPAC.